All right, so I think we're going to start now. So, hello everyone again. Thank you very much for joining us today at our webinar on the Committee for the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women and Over Treaty Bodies. This webinar is made by the WILPF Human Rights Program, and we would like to give you a brief introduction on the CEDAW Committee and Over Treaty Bodies here in Geneva. So we just some technical points for those of you who are not familiar with the webinar format. It's okay if I cannot hear you, but I will, at the very end of this webinar, I will be able to give you the floor, and there will be time for questions. I will explain you later how you can do that. And also, you cannot see me, but you should be able to see my screen right now. So yeah, it's perfectly okay if you cannot see me. You're only supposed to see my screen. And I cannot hear you, and it's okay. Don't worry about this. I will give you the floor at the end of this webinar. So we would like, through this webinar, to provide you with some basic information about the human rights bodies. I will try to make this webinar as understandable as possible. So I'm sorry for those of you who might already be familiar with the human rights mechanisms, with the UN human rights mechanisms, but I will the purpose of this webinar is to give everyone the chance to know more about these mechanisms and to understand at least the basics of these mechanisms. So I will try to keep it simple as possible, at least. Also, this webinar is being recorded, so it will be available within a few days on our website and on our YouTube page. So I would like first to give you a short introduction on what the WILPF Human Rights Program is. So as you may know, WILPF is divided into several programs, which are the Disarmament Program, the Women, Peace and Security Program, and the Human Rights Program. And here in Geneva, the Human Rights Program work with all the UN human rights bodies, which are now all based in Geneva. It was not the case before, but it is now. They're all in Geneva, so it's very convenient for us for our advocacy work. These human rights bodies are mainly the Human Rights Council and its main mechanism called the Universal Periodic Review, but I will talk about these two mechanisms later on our future webinar that will take place this Wednesday. So if you haven't registered yet, I invite you to do so if you want to learn more about the Human Rights Council. And the other human rights bodies are those called the treaty-based bodies. And this is what we're going to talk about today, the treaty-based bodies, and especially the Sedo Committee, which is the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. If you go to the website of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, you have the list of all these human rights bodies. So the charter-based bodies, as I said, the Human Rights Council and its Universal Periodic Review, and then all the treaty bodies, 10 human rights bodies today, which are the Human Rights Committee, Committee on Elimination, on the elimination of racial discrimination, on social cultural rights, on the elimination of discrimination against women, against torture, and so on. And yes, and so to come back to the WILPF's human rights program, it is basically one human rights program director who is Maria Munoz Maraver, and my name is Leah Kaur, and I'm currently replacing Maria as she's on maternity leave. So the human rights program team is basically the human rights program director and usually an intern. And our objective as the Human Rights Program here is to bring our political message to the United Nations, and to coordinate and assist our sections in different countries, in order to help them bring their ideas and their political message. We want to assist grassroots activists to reach the UN. And so for that, in this regard, we also publish blogs on our website to inform both our sections and the rest of the large public on what is going on at the United Nations regarding human rights. And we also do a newsletter on I think it's one newsletter per week during the Human Rights Council session. And also, if you haven't signed up to this newsletter, I encourage you to do so, because if you want to be informed of what is going on here at the United Nations in Geneva about human rights. Also, in the work that we are doing here as the Human Rights Program, we try to keep in mind what is called the integrated approach. So if you go, I don't know if some of you had time to go through the materials that we published online. They were here on our website, as you can see here. We made materials both in Spanish and in English, explaining different things about the Sedo Committee, the Human Rights Council, so you can download them and have a look. So regarding the integrated approach, basically it's something that it's very that WILPF is trying to bring to our advocacy work, and the goal is to make the connection between human rights, disarmament, and women and peace and security. We would like to, because we would like to the member states of the United Nations to understand that these are interrelated, that disarmament, or women and peace and security have human rights consequences, and that all these three are interrelated and connected. So we try to look at disarmament issues and women and peace and security through the human rights lens. We try to bring these three all together, and we want to bring the work that is done at the Security Council in terms of disarmament and security at the Human Rights Council as well here in Geneva. So what we want for this integrated approach is to bring a broader perspective to show that human rights are connected to disarmament and women and peace and security as well. So if you want to know a little bit more about this integrated approach, I invite you to have a look at the materials where you have a short introduction about what this integrated approach is. But that is something we are quite proud of, because it's something, our integrated approach is very much appreciated by our partners here. And we think that through this integrated approach, we actually bring something more at the United Nations. So for the human rights bodies, as I said, we have the Human Rights Council, the treaty bodies, and that you can see here on the website of the High Commissioner. And so each of these treaty bodies is related to a specific convention. So, for example, for the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination against Women, this committee works on the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination against Women, which means that these bodies are thematic bodies. They monitor the implementation of each thematic convention, which is, it can be a challenge for us, but it's also a great advantage, as I will explain to you later. So each of these human rights treaty bodies is made of independent experts. So that means it's completely different from the Human Rights Council, because the Human Rights Council is made of member states, while the treaty bodies are made of independent experts. So the way we address these treaty bodies is completely different from the way we address the Human Rights Council. Because, for example, the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, these are experts. So they know a lot about the issue of discrimination against women. They have a wide knowledge on the specific issue, and it's the same for the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, for example. There are experts on racial discrimination, so they know a lot about this specific issue. And the advantage of working with them is that their work is a lot less politicized than the work of the Human Rights Council, because these experts are independent experts, so they don't represent the states, which is a great advantage for us. Although I have to say that there is still politicization, because even though these experts are independent, they are still invited by the states to join these committees. But it's still a great advantage for us, the fact that they are experts and we can be a lot more specific in our advocacy work with them. But the disadvantage that these treaty bodies represent is that their mandate is very limited, because it is strictly determined in each treaty, and they can't really go further. So we have to be careful in the way we advocate with them, because we have to be very specific in the way we advocate. Although some of these treaty bodies now try to expand their mandate and the topics that they focus on, and which is something that the Sedo committee in particular has been doing for a while now, through different instruments like general recommendations or things like that. And the another disadvantage of these treaty bodies is that they might know a lot about one specific topic, but unfortunately, they're not experts in other issues. So they don't know a lot about other topics. And for example, the issue of gender, um, because as you may know, every topic has a gender aspect, like disarmament or human rights. Everything has a gender aspect, but usually these committees tend to leave out the gender aspect of all these issues, because they are not experts in gender, except maybe the CEDAW committee, but the others don't really know a lot about gender. So it is our responsibility as a women's rights NGO to bring the gender aspect in every topic to all of these committees, because they don't have expertise in gender, but we have it. So it is our responsibility to bring it and to make them understand that gender is an important issue that is related to absolutely every topic. Um, so regarding, for example, the CEDAW committee, it has 21 members, I think, and usually most of these treaty bodies have between 17, 18, 20, 21 members, approximately. And the members of the CEDAW committee, as I said, are experts, and there are also what is called the states parties. So that doesn't mean they are part of the sorry, of the committee, but they are states that have signed the convention and are therefore bound to implement the CEDAW convention. Um, So many states are, regarding the CEDAW committee, many states are states parties to the Sedo Convention, except the United States, I think, among others. So in its work, the CEDAW committee uses different mechanisms and instruments. And the main mechanism is the reporting procedure. This is a procedure that is made to monitor the implementation of the convention by the states. So basically, the state that is being reviewed in the framework of this reporting procedure has to send delegates representing not only its government but also its parliament and the national human rights institutions that may exist in this country. Because what you have to understand is that not only the government is responsible for implementing the treaty, but also the parliament and the national human rights institution. So the state has to send representatives of the government, the parliament, and the national human rights institution. And during this reporting procedure, they have to show and prove that they have been implementing the treaty, not only by voting the laws that might be relevant to implement the treaty, but also they have to prove that they have to show concrete results of the laws that have been implemented. They have to show the concrete results of what they've been doing to implement the treaty. It's not only voting a law, because that is not sufficient to fully implement the treaty. You have to show that the law that you voted actually has some concrete results. So every 4 years, the state is being reviewed by the CEDAW committee and has to submit a report. For that report by the state, the state should include and consult civil society organizations to draft this report, but unfortunately, they usually don't do it. So, what civil society can do is a shadow report, which is usually made in collaboration with between different national NGOs. So, and that's a good way for NGOs to participate. So both states and NGOs submit the reports, and these reports are being reviewed by the members of the committee, and then the session can take place. And during the session, there is usually a briefing day with NGOs for the committee to listen to the NGOs so we can participate in this briefing and make statements and recommendations. And then there is an entire day of dialogue between the representatives of the country that is being reviewed and the members of the committee. So during this dialogue, the delegates have to introduce and explain the report of the state, and sometimes they also have to update it if it's necessary. And then afterwards, the committee asks a series of questions to the state's delegates, and then sometimes the state has either one night to provide the answers to the committee, or they have to give the answers on the same day. That depends. And so that is what's happening at the session. And before that, the committee also organizes pre-sessions, which which usually take place 2 sessions before the actual presentation of the report. And so during these pre-sessions, what we can do as an NGO is, for example, to submit an alternative report in order to suggest a list of issues to be reported on at the session. And so during this pre-session, they do a sort of briefing with NGOs and with the state, and we can go there and give some recommendations regarding the list of the most important issues that have to be discussed at the actual session. So that brings me to the list of issues prior to reporting. These, I think you can find them um, on the website, on the webpage of the committee, of the Sedo committee, for example. So this list of issues prior to reporting is a list of questions that are given before the report, so that they give the most important issues that the state will have to report on during the review. And this can be very, very important for NGOs because uh, thanks to that list of issues prior to reporting, that we have we have the detailed information about what specific issues the committee is interested in. So as you can see here on the website, you have list of issues for many different countries. And so yeah, thanks to this list of issues, we know what issues the Sedo committee care about and what is going to be very important for the state review. Then after the session, there is a rapporteur among the members of the committee, and this rapporteur will draft concluding observations. And these concluding observations are very important for us because we can do the follow-up. And these follow-up we usually try to do that with our sections on the ground because they are the one who can monitor the implementation of the concluding observations and recommendations that were made by the committee. And so this follow-up is very important and has to be done by people, by grassroots activists on the ground, because they know what is actually being done. So we can rely on these concluding observations we can rely on our sections to monitor the implementation of the recommendations and concluding observation. So that was the main procedure, the reporting procedure. There's another procedure called the communication procedure. It is also called individual complaint, and basically it is a right for an individual to petition or to complain about human rights violation. So it is on something very, very technical and not very often used because it's very technical and it's quite a complex procedure because you can only petition or complain to a committee, to a human rights committee, only after having exhausted all judicial domestic remedies and procedure. But what it is that you can bring one case in particular to the committee because, and that is what is called the due diligence principle, which is basically that the state is responsible even for the behavior of a private actor, not only for the behavior of the state, if the state violates human rights, but also in case an individual or any private actor violates human rights. And so the state has to make everyone respect the convention. So this is the basis. This due diligence principle is the basis of this individual complaint, because that means you can bring your own case to the committee because the state is responsible for the human rights violations that you have endured, even if it was committed by a private actor or an individual. But as I said, this is very technical and it's a very exceptional procedure. So it's only you can do it only if you have tried everything before and nothing worked. And also, as it's very technical, you're gonna need technical help to petition or to complain to a committee. Another procedure of the treaty-based bodies is the inquiry procedure. This can happen if you have very important information to provide to the committee if there's a grave human rights violation, and that you can denounce to the committee, and the committee can possibly decide to open an inquiry procedure, because that would enable the committee to conduct investigations and inquiries into serious and systematic abuses of human rights in states, in some states. But this can happen only in states that are actually parties to the optional protocol. So that's a bit, it's quite limited, and it's not very often used either. Because, as I said, the main procedure within the committee is the reporting procedure. Another mechanism that is being used by the committee is general recommendation. These general recommendations are also called general comments, and they are made to interpret or update the convention. And this is a very important tool. And the CEDAW committee in particular uses it a lot because, as I said previously, the disadvantage of these treaty-based committees is that their mandate is very limited by the convention. So what they try to do, and especially the CEDAW committee, is to interpret or update the convention so that they can broader their mandate. And for example, the CEDAW committee uh, um, has published a general recommendation that is very useful for WILPF. It is the general recommendation number 30, and this recommendation is called women's rights before, during and after conflict. So it's basically on women, peace, and security, which is very good for us because they bring together women, peace, and security and women's rights. So this is a very important instrument for us, and we can use it to advocate before the CEDAW committee. So in these general recommendations, the committee usually gives specific information about what is said in the convention. They interpret the treaty, and that has many legal consequences for the states because that means they also have to respect and implement what is said in the general recommendation, not only in the not only in the convention. And so it's sometimes states can be reluctant to these general recommendations. And although a general recommendation doesn't have the same weight as the original convention, they still have some authoritative weight. It's still an interpretation of the treaty that is legally binding, that has legal force. So these, for example, these general recommendations are also a way to update the convention because human rights violations tend to always change depending on the evolution of technologies. So it is important to keep the conventions up to date, and that's something that the committees can do through general recommendations. And for example, for treaties which are not very strong in terms of gender, for example, they can become stronger thanks to general comments, because these general comments or recommendations can complement the treaties for specific issues such as gender. So these recommendations or comments are also very useful in this regard, to make treaties stronger than they were when they were initially voted. So, after all these different procedures, we have different ways as NGOs to participate. And what we can do, for example, is a shadow report, and that is something that WILPF has done in the past With the Sedo committee in particular, we did a shadow report on India, for example, that you can now see on my screen. So this is a shadow report that we made for the Sedo committee on India. We also made one on DRC. I think it's here. No, I don't have it here. But yeah, anyway, so this is a shadow report. This is an example of a shadow report that an NGO can do. And it's a very useful tool to advocate at the committee because we can publish it online. We also have printed versions that we share with the members of the committee, and we can also translate these reports because, for example, we did a report. Our section in DRC did a shadow report that was in French, but it's usually better to have advocacy documents in English because not everyone at the committee speaks French. So it's better to have it in English, and this is what we did. We translated it from French into English. And for that, for those shadow reports, we coordinate with the section depending on what they want to do and what would be relevant for the committee. So we provide usually in these reports recommendations, and we also give some explanations and details about the main issues that are taking place in a specific country. So this is a very good way for us to bring our message to the committee. And so yes, we can do our own shadow report. But what NGOs can also do, usually grassroots NGOs, is to be part of the national shadow report. And so this national shadow report is usually made by a coalition of national NGOs. They collaborate together and to make one national shadow report. And this is a great tool. This is a great advocacy tool as well because each NGO can bring its own expertise in this shadow report. So it's a great way to advocate, and it's also good that NGOs actually collaborate and work all together. Another way to participate in the committee as an NGO is a statement. We can submit written statements and also read statements during the session or the pre-session. So what we do as WILPF, we usually try to invite someone from the ground, someone from our section, a grassroots activist, to read the statement to the committee here in Geneva. Because usually when the statement directly comes from the grassroots activists, it has a lot more impact than if it's someone from Geneva, for example. So as much as possible, we try to bring someone from the ground to read the statement. And but to do so, we need fundings. But so when we don't have the necessary fundings, we as the human rights team here in Geneva, we read the statement. But yeah, it's always better to have someone from the ground. Then afterwards, what is also very important for NGOs is the follow-up procedure, because our advocacy work does not end when the concluding observations are voted. For example, the work keeps going on afterwards because we have to monitor the implementation of these recommendations, and so we try to, for that, collaborate with our sections on the ground so that we encourage them to do the following up and to monitor the implementation of recommendations. And on our side here in Geneva, we try to, for example, write blogs that you might have seen They are published on our website. For example, this one. This is a blog that we published on women's rights in India after the CEDAW session. And so these blogs, we try to discuss what has been said during the session, and we try to inform everyone of what happened during the session and the recommendations that we gave, etc. Yes. So I think that is it from my part. Oh yes, that was another shadow report that we did for the Sedo committee on DRC. This one, yes, was on gender-based violence and the small arms flow. And as you can see in this women, peace, and security approach, this is a very good example of what I said earlier about the about the integrated approach, because we made in this report, we tried to make the link between women, peace, and security and women's human rights. So, and this is exactly what we try to do, try to make the connection between all these different issues to advocate before the human rights bodies. So yeah, I think this is it. I will now open the floor for questions if you have any. So if you want, you can, I think there's a little hand that you can click on, so you can raise your hand and I will see it in my screen, and then I can give you the floor. I can unmute you and then you can ask your question. Or if you don't want to take the floor, you can also just write a question, I think. So I will give you some time maybe to raise your hand or type a question. I can see that 2 of you have raised your hand, so I'm gonna give you the floor. I need to see how I can do that, how I can unmute you. I will first give the floor to Banumati Natarajan. I think you've raised your hand, so go ahead. You are.
Thank you. That was actually a mistake, but then I have a question too.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm listening.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
can
I
you
can
hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering, I've been following a little bit of this United Nations rapporteur who is reporting on food security. Has there been any involvement from the women's bodies or other NGOs there in this perspective to take the issue of women?
You mean regarding food security?
Yeah.
I think it's an issue that has been mainly discussed at the Human Rights Council, if I'm not mistaken, and
yeah,
but not so much by the treaty bodies.
No, okay. But that could be a point one can think about, I guess, in the future.
Definitely, we could.
To include this under the treaty body, treaty-based bodies.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. It would be.
But that would need a lot of probably research work and examples. And how does one do that? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. That is an issue that we could actually, we could work on this food security issue and try to see how we can advocate in this regard with treaty bodies and not only with the Human Rights Council. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So I will now give the floor to Gladys Miller. I think you've raised your hand. So go ahead, you are unmuted.
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay, so that was a mistake. Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry. Okay, so I don't see any other hands. So I don't know if you have any other question. Do not hesitate. You can just type it or raise your hand. I see a question by Elizabeth Christensen, who asks, what will we do towards CEDAW this year and next? For the CEDAW committee, I think we are trying to we are working on the pre-session, because this is a very important moment for WILPF. It's actually better to advocate during the pre-session than during the actual session. And we are working on, if I'm not mistaken, because I don't have the agenda with me here now. That's a good question. The thing is that what we are going to do with the CEDAW committee this year and next will depend on the countries that are going to be reviewed. So if there's a country if there's a country where we have a section, and that this country is going to be reviewed by the CEDAW committee, we will try either a shadow report. We'll try to do a shadow report or a statement. We usually try as many things as possible. We usually try to do a shadow report, a written statement, an oral statement, and sometimes also an alternative report for the pre-session to suggest potential issues to be discussed during the session. So this is what we're going to do for many different countries. So I hope that answered your question. I can see another question from Ada Pass, who would like to know if there are any plans on reports or research on Southeast Europe in the near future. Again, that will depend on the agenda of each committee. But for Southeast Europe, to be honest, I am not sure. Because as I said, I don't have the agenda here with me, so I would need to double check. But if definitely if there's something about Southeast Europe and that we have a section and that we can do something with them, then we will definitely try to to do some advocacy work with one of the committee there. Oops, yes. So yeah, that will depend on the agenda, but if there's something, yes, we will definitely try a shadow report, or some research, or anything that could help. We will try that. I think Banamati Natarajan raised her hand again, so I'm gonna give you the floor. Apparently it's not working. I don't know why. So sorry, Banamati, but if you have a question, you can type it. You can write it down and I can see it. There's another question from Elizabeth about, I'm assuming you're talking about a webinar, if we're going to do another Women Stop War webinar on CEDAW in March. I don't know actually. I'm not in charge of the Women Stop War project, but I can ask my colleague and I will let you know. There's another question from Gladys, who would like to know what strategy we suggest in cases related to the United States, sorry, because this is a country that hasn't signed the Sedo Convention. This is a very good question, and unfortunately, there isn't much we can do about it. Since they haven't signed the Sedo Convention, they don't have any obligations in this regard. So the only thing we can do is to advocate and ask them to sign the Sedo Convention. And afterwards, once they sign the treaty, we can work with them and we can advocate and push them to implement the Sedo Convention. But if they don't ratify the convention, then we can only encourage the United States to sign the convention. Otherwise, there's not much we can do, unfortunately. There's another question by Rita Ackerman, who is wondering if the CEDAW committee will be attending the WILPF Congress conference in 2015. Very good question again, but I personally don't know because as I said, I'm not in charge of the conference in 2015 for our anniversary. But I will ask my colleague and see if there is something that is being planned to invite members of the CEDAW committee. That would be actually very interesting if they could attend our anniversary congress next year. That would be interesting, but I don't know. So I'm gonna ask my colleague who is in charge of the anniversary preparation, and I will get back to you on this. All right, I don't see any other question. So this is like, if you have any other question, do not hesitate, just raise your hand or type it in. There is Laura Roscos, it's not a question, but she's saying that there is a group in the US working with the Conference of Mayors to implement CEDAW municipally in 100 cities and towns in the United States. So this is great. This is good to know. Thank you, Laura, for that information. This is very useful. Thank you. All right, so if there isn't any other question, I'm gonna close this webinar. Thank you very much to all of you. Oh, someone raised her hand. Oh, Helen Barfield raised her hand. Go ahead, you have the floor, Ellen.
Yes, thank you. I'm Ellen Barfield from Baltimore, Maryland in the US. Since we're not jumping too much into this specific topic, I'm going to step a little bit aside and mention I attended the US report to the subcommittee on child soldiers of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which US also is not a member of, but they do subscribe to the child soldier issue. But of course, they obfuscate tremendously. It was wonderful to be able to do that. And I wonder when that reporting mechanism may come around again to push the US again on that issue.
For the Committee on the Rights of the Child?
Yes, the subcommittee on child soldiers particularly.
Yeah, on the rights of the child. To be honest, we're not, as WILPF, we're not following the issue of child soldiers, so I'm not really aware of what is going on there at this subcommittee, but I can have a look. Because that is, yes, it's an interesting issue, but as the WILPF Human Rights Program is not working on this issue currently, so I'm unfortunately not aware of that, but I will look it up and let you know what I find. Thank you for your question. All right, so I can see another question. If a question from Rita Ackerman wondering if Hungary has signed the Sedo Treaty. Good question. We can have it's probably here the answer, because there's a list of the countries that have signed. You see the Sedo States Party. So this is a list of the countries that have signed the Sedo Convention, and Hungary is on the list. So yes, Hungary has ratified the Sedo Convention. I don't know if someone else has other questions. I don't see any other question. So unless someone wants to raise her hand right now, I think I will close this webinar for now. I can see, I don't know if it's Ellen Barfield or Banumati Natarajan who has raised her hands, because I don't know which one of you. Okay, I will first give the floor to Banumati Natarajan. Go ahead, you have the floor. No, it's not working. I don't know why, but maybe you have some technical issues with your microphone, but I can't give you the floor. I'm really sorry. I don't know why it's not working. All right, so I will give the floor again to Ellen Barfield. Go ahead, you have the floor.
No, that's just left over from the previous one.
Oh, okay, sorry. All right. That's okay. So apparently no one else has other questions. So I will now oh no, sorry. There's another question from Arapas who's wondering about what kind of argument do the countries give when they refuse to sign the Sedo Convention? Well, usually what they say is that they already have laws and like domestic laws that are sufficient to protect women from discrimination, or that they have already signed other international treaties that, from their point of view, is sufficient to protect women and to respect women's rights. So they think that signing the CEDAW Convention, for example, will not change anything for women in the US. For example, they just think that the domestic laws and the international conventions that they have already signed are sufficient, and they don't need the CEDAW Convention. So yeah, basically that's what states that are reluctant to sign the CEDAW Convention, for example, that's what they usually say. Oh, I have another question by Elizabeth. What is a side event in Geneva? Because yes, a side event is a parallel event organized by an NGO during the Human Rights Council session, for example. This is a side event is usually something we do during a Human Rights Council session, not so much during sessions by treaty bodies, because it's less relevant. Usually a side event can have an impact if we do one during the Human Rights Council session. So yes, it's just a parallel event that we organize during the Human Rights Council session, and we can doing a side event. We can just do a side event on a specific issues. For example, we're going to do a side event in September at the Human Rights Council session. We're going to do a side event on military spendings and gender equality, for example. So we can just choose a specific issue that we want to discuss during the Human Rights Council session. We want to invite member states and other NGOs and other stakeholders to participate in the side events so that we can provide them with a lot of information, a lot of details about a specific issue that we are concerned about. And so, yeah, that's just another advocacy tool that we can use during the Human Rights Council session. You can indeed attend. Elizabeth is also asking if we can come to the side event. Yes, it's open to everyone, but for that you need to have a badge, a UN badge, so that we can. It depends on what you actually want to do, or. But yes, these side events are open to everyone. You just need a UN badge. Ada is asking what would be the arguments that we can use to encourage states to sign, for example, the Sedo Convention. Well, that basically, if the Sedo Convention has been voted and elaborated, it's because it is useful and it brings something to women's human rights, and that the the reluctance of the state to sign the Sedo Convention proves that the state is not 100% committed to the protection of women's human rights, for example, and that we and that this CEDAW Convention is the main instrument for women's human rights. As of today, it's the main instrument that we have to protect women from discrimination, and that and that if indeed the United States, for example, has sufficient domestic laws to protect women, then these laws should be in line with the requirements of the CEDAW Convention. And then if the U.S. laws are indeed in line with the CEDAW Convention, then the U.S. should just ratify the CEDAW Convention, because it shouldn't be a problem for them to respect this convention if they indeed have the most relevant laws to protect women. I mean, if they don't want to sign the U.S. convention, then that means the CEDAW convention. Sorry, then that means they probably don't have they probably don't don't fully respect the CEDAW convention. Elizabeth is also asking about the right to peace. Good question. This is an issue that is going to be discussed in September at the Human Rights Council, not at the not at the CEDAW committee or any other treaty bodies. It's a very general, broad issue that is going to be discussed in September at the Human Rights Council, and so we will, of course, be there to attend the session and make probably a blog, and so that we can report on what is going to be said at the UN about the right to peace, and we will, of course, keep you informed about the discussions at the UN about this specific right to peace issue. Thank you. All right, so I don't see any other question. I hope I answered every question. Yes, Elizabeth, you raised your hand. But yeah, okay, I will now give you the floor, Elizabeth, so that you can ask your question. You have the floor, go ahead. I cannot hear you. Hold on a second. I can see there maybe there is some technical issue here. I will once again give you the floor, Elizabeth. You can go ahead. No, I still cannot hear you for some reason. Maybe if you have a question, try to raise your hand again, or... Oh, yes, so you have some technical issue. Well, then if you have another question, just you can feel free to write it down. I can still see it. So if you have time. Oh, otherwise, anyway, I'll be available for any other questions you may have afterwards. So feel free to write. Oh, yes, Elizabeth, you raised your hand. I will try to give you the floor once again, hopefully. No, it's not working. I cannot hear you. So maybe, yeah, just write on your... Oh, she just wanted to thank me. Well, thank you, Elizabeth. All right, so I see no other question from the participants. So thank you very much to all of you for attending this webinar. I hope it met your expectations, and I also hope to see you again on Wednesday for the webinar on the Human Rights Council and the Universal Periodic Review. Thank you again and have a nice day. Bye.